Right now, somewhere in your life, there is a version of you that only exists to be approved of. A version that chooses words based on how they will land, not on whether they are true. A version that shrinks in meetings, softens opinions, and laughs at jokes that are not funny. A version that rehearses a text message 4 times before sending it, checking the tone, checking again, wondering if a single word will be misread. A version that has quietly handed the steering wheel of its own life to a jury of people who will forget the verdict by tomorrow morning. You know this version. You have been it today. Here is the harsh truth most people will never sit with long enough to understand. The opinion of others was never a reflection of your worth. It was a reflection of their fears, their history, and their limited vantage point, refracted through a mood you did not cause and cannot control. And yet, you have built entire decisions around it. Careers, relationships, even the posture of your body when you walk into a room. You built them around a court that has no real jurisdiction over you, and that, if you are honest, you never actually appointed. Think about how strange this arrangement really is. You would never let a stranger with no knowledge of your life make your financial decisions. You would never hand your medical choices to someone who glanced at you once in a hallway. And yet, every single day, you let exactly that kind of stranger cast a vote on how you feel about yourself. A coworker's raised eyebrow, a relative's passing comment, a faceless number of likes. The ancient Stoics knew something about this that we have almost completely forgotten. Not because they did not care about people or about honor or about doing right by their communities, but because they had drawn a single, brutal, and precise distinction. The line between what is yours to control and what will never belong to you no matter how badly you want it. Almost 2,000 years ago, one man did not just write about this idea from the safety of a scroll. He walked it, quite literally, through the crowded streets of Rome, dressed in a way specifically designed to be mocked. What he was training for was not fashion. It was freedom. And by the end of this, you will understand exactly how to train for it too. Rome, 1st century BC. The Republic is dying, though most people alive do not yet know it. Ambition moves through the city like a current under still water. Senators trading favors, generals quietly building private armies, and everywhere the unspoken law that governs public life. Appearances are everything. What you wear, who you dine with, how you are seen entering the forum. All of it is currency, spent and counted as carefully as coin. Consider what the morning ritual looked like for a Roman of standing. Before the sun fully cleared the rooftops, a household of slaves would already be at work, pressing the heavy wool folds of a toga into place, a task requiring real skill, since a poorly draped toga was its own kind of public humiliation. Clients would gather outside the front door for the morning greeting, hoping to be seen walking beside their patron later that day. To be seen with the right man in the right clothing was itself a form of political currency. A toga pressed and gleaming white is not just clothing in this world. It is a signal. It says, I belong. I am respectable. Do not question me. Into this world walks a man named Cato. History remembers him as Cato the Younger, to separate him from his famous great-grandfather. Plutarch, writing his account of Cato's life roughly a century and a half later, describes a man who from a young age showed an unusual, almost unsettling steadiness. Even as a boy, Cato was noted for an obstinate refusal to be moved by threats or flattery alike. The kind of temperament that unsettles adults precisely because it cannot be bribed or bullied into compliance. By the time Cato reached manhood, according to Plutarch's account, he had turned this steadiness into something closer to a discipline, a practiced philosophy of self-training. And one of the details Plutarch records is almost shocking in its simplicity. Cato began appearing in public wearing a dark-colored toga, at a time when the respectable, expected color for a Roman of his station to wear in the forum was white. He would sometimes go without the tunic typically worn underneath, and at times without shoes, walking barefoot through streets where senators paraded in polished sandals. Picture what this actually meant sensorially, socially. The forum was not an empty stage. It was packed. Merchants shouting prices over one another, clients trailing behind patrons at a respectful half-step, the smell of oil lamps and unwashed wool and roasting meat drifting from nearby stalls, and the constant low roar of a city that never fully quieted, even at midday. Stone underfoot, worn smooth by centuries of sandaled traffic, would have been cold in the early hours and near scalding by afternoon. The kind of surface that made bare feet, by itself, a visible declaration. Through all of it walked a young aristocrat. Someone with the bloodline and the means to dress exactly as expected, choosing instead to stand out in a way that Plutarch tells us drew ridicule and stares. People noticed. People whispered behind cupped hands. Some, according to the account, openly laughed, the way a crowd does when it senses something has broken an unspoken rule and is not quite sure how to respond except with mockery. There is a particular kind of exposure in being stared at in a space this dense. No crowd to disappear into. No quiet corner to retreat to. Just the long walk across an open forum with eyes tracking you the entire way. Anyone who has felt the heat rise in their face after a single embarrassing moment in a quiet room can begin to imagine what it took to walk that same walk deliberately day after day in front of hundreds. Cato, by Plutarch's telling, did not do this out of poverty, and he did not do it for shock value or rebellion for its own sake. He explained his reasoning to those close to him in terms that Plutarch summarizes rather than quotes directly. The idea, in essence, being that he was training himself to feel shame only for what was truly shameful, and to remain unaffected by the judgment of the crowd over things that carried no real moral weight, like the color of a garment. Think about the discipline that requires. It is one thing to endure ridicule you cannot avoid, a misfortune, an illness, an inherited disadvantage. It is another thing entirely to walk toward it voluntarily, again and again as a form of training. Cato was not trying to be scandalous. He was doing something closer to what a modern strength coach would call progressive overload, except the muscle he was building was not physical. It was his indifference to the crowd's verdict. There is a broader context worth sitting inside here. Rome's political culture ran almost entirely on reputation management. A senator's influence depended heavily on being seen the right way at the right functions in the right clothing, aligned with the right families. To willingly disrupt that image was, in a very real sense, to remove yourself from a game that consumed nearly everyone around you. Cato later became known for a reputation of near-legendary incorruptibility. Someone who could not be bought, flattered, or shamed into abandoning a position he believed was right, even when it cost him politically, even when the entire Senate stood against him. Historians differ on exactly how much of this steadiness came from natural temperament versus deliberate philosophical training, and Plutarch himself is writing decades after the events, drawing on earlier sources that have not survived intact. Some caution is warranted before treating every detail as a verified transcript, rather than an account shaped over time. But the through line the ancient sources agree on is this. Whatever its origin, Cato's indifference to public opinion on trivial matters became, over the course of his life, one of the most remarked upon qualities of the man. And by his own private reasoning, that indifference did not happen by accident. It was practiced. Deliberately, uncomfortably, publicly practiced. That is the story. Now here is what it is actually teaching you. Cato's dark toga was never really about clothing. It was an exercise in what later Stoic writers would formalize into a much larger idea. Epictetus, in his discourses, draws a sharp line between what he calls things up to us and things not up to us. Our own judgments, choices, and reactions belong to us completely. Other people's opinions of us do not. They belong to them, shaped by their own history, insecurities, and limitations, filtered through a lens we will never fully see or control. Most people live as though this line does not exist. They treat other people's opinions as though those opinions were a kind of verdict, handed down from some impartial court. In reality, it is closer to weather. It changes. It is shaped by forces that have nothing to do with your actual worth. Someone's harsh judgment of you on a given day might have far more to do with their own bad morning than anything you did. Here is where it gets interesting from a psychological standpoint. Modern research on social anxiety and what is sometimes called the spotlight effect shows something the Stoics intuited 2,000 years before we had the vocabulary for it. People dramatically overestimate how much others notice and remember their actions. We walk around assuming we are the main character in everyone else's story, constantly under evaluation, when in reality most people are far too consumed with their own internal monologue to be running a detailed audit of yours. This is precisely why Cato's exercise was so effective. He was not hoping people would stop judging him. He assumed they would. The training was not about changing their behavior. It was about changing his relationship to it, proving to himself, through direct, repeated exposure, that the sting of disapproval could be endured, examined, and ultimately drained of its power. This is the part people skip when they try to stop caring what people think. They attempt it purely through willpower or self-talk, repeating, "I do not care," without ever testing it. But indifference built on avoidance is fragile. It collapses the moment real judgment arrives. Cato's version was built on exposure. He walked directly into the discomfort, deliberately, at a scale he could control, a strange toga, bare feet, precisely so that when a real crisis of reputation arrived later, as it inevitably did in his political life, he had already done the rehearsal. There is a deeper psychological principle hiding inside this. one that connects directly to real-world success. The people who accomplish extraordinary things, who build unconventional companies, who make unpopular but correct decisions, who say the difficult true thing in a room full of people who do not want to hear it, are rarely the ones with no fear of judgment. They are the ones who have simply practiced tolerating that fear enough times that it no longer dictates their behavior. Courage, in the Stoic sense, was never the absence of concern for others' opinions. It was the trained capacity to act rightly despite it. And here is the piece that ties it all together for your actual life, right now, in whatever version of the forum you walk through. The office, the group chat, the family dinner table. Every time you soften a true opinion to avoid friction, every time you make a decision based on what will look good rather than what you actually believe is right, you are handing your one finite life over to people who are ultimately in charge of their own judgments, not yours. You cannot control what they conclude. You can only control whether you let that uncertainty run your life. Step 1. The deliberate discomfort exercise. This is Cato's method, translated into modern terms. Choose one small harmless action each week that will draw mild social disapproval or attention. Not something reckless or disrespectful, but something that exposes you to being noticed and mildly judged. Wear something slightly unconventional to a low-stakes gathering. Order confidently at a restaurant without over-explaining your choice to the table. Voice a genuine but unpopular opinion in a casual conversation where the actual stakes are low. A preference in music, a disagreement about a film, a small correction of fact. The goal is not the action itself. It is the rehearsal of feeling the flicker of social discomfort and staying steady inside it, on purpose at a scale you choose. Here is what this looks like in practice. Say you disagree with the group consensus at a dinner. Everyone loved a restaurant and you did not. The old pattern is to nod along, maybe offer a vague, "Yeah, it was fine," and let the moment pass. The trained response is to say, plainly and without over-explaining, "Honestly, it was not for me." Then stop talking. Do not justify it further. Sit with the half-second of silence that follows. Notice the urge rising in your chest to soften it, to add a qualifier, to make it more palatable, and let that urge pass without acting on it. Sit with the urge to explain yourself further, to backtrack, to over-apologize, and do not. Notice how quickly the discomfort peaks and then fades, usually within a minute or two, often faster than you expect. Do this consistently, once or twice a week, in situations you deliberately choose. You are, quite literally, building the same muscle Cato built walking through the forum. Proof, gathered firsthand and repeatedly, that disapproval is survivable, temporary, and very rarely as catastrophic as the anticipation made it feel. Step 2. The dichotomy of control audit. At the end of each day for 1 week, write down every moment you felt anxious, embarrassed, or overly concerned with how you were perceived. Be specific. Not, "I felt bad in the meeting," but the exact moment. The pause after you spoke. The glance between two colleagues. The reply that took longer to arrive than you expected. Then, next to each entry, split it into 2 columns. In the first column, write what was actually within your control in that moment. In the second, write what belonged entirely to the other person's judgment, mood, or interpretation. Take a real example. You sent a proposal to your manager and they responded tersely with no explanation. Your anxious mind immediately fills the gap with a story. "They think I am incompetent, this is going to cost me." In the control column, you write, "I prepared thoroughly, I communicated clearly, I met the deadline." In the not control column, you write, "Their mood that morning, whatever meeting they just left, their private standards for what terse even means to them, none of which you were in the room for." Epictetus's framework is precise here, drawn directly from the opening lines of his discourses and the Enchiridion. Your intention, your effort, your honesty, your preparation. These are yours fully and completely. Their interpretation, their mood, their private history that colors how they saw you. None of that was ever yours to manage, and no amount of anxious replaying of the moment will change that fact. This exercise is not about dismissing other people's feelings or becoming indifferent to how you treat them. It is about correctly locating where your responsibility actually ends so you stop carrying weight that was never yours to carry in the first place. Step 3. The premeditation of disapproval. Before any event where you anticipate judgment, a presentation, a difficult conversation, a decision you know will not please everyone, spend 2 full minutes beforehand imagining the worst realistic reaction. Not catastrophizing into absurd territory, but calmly, deliberately picturing the disapproving face, the critical comment, the awkward silence that follows a hard truth. Let the scene play out in detail. See the specific person's expression. Hear the specific tone of the pushback you are dreading. Then ask yourself directly and answer honestly, If that happens, what actually occurs to me afterward? Do I lose my job over one difficult conversation? Does one person's disapproval erase the working relationship you have built over months or years? Usually, the honest answer, once you actually sit with it instead of flinching away, is discomfort, not disaster. A bruised afternoon, not a ruined life. This is a technique the Stoics practiced under the name premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. Seneca refers to a version of this practice repeatedly in his letters to Lucilius, urging a kind of mental rehearsal for hardship so that misfortune, when it arrives, finds you already prepared rather than blindsided. Its power lies in removing the element of surprise. Fear thrives on the unknown, on the vague, unspecified shape of something bad might happen. When you have already walked through the worst realistic version of the reaction in your mind, calmly, in advance, with your eyes open rather than closed, the real moment, when it actually arrives, loses most of its grip over you, because you have already stood inside it once before. Step 4. The inner judge reassignment. This is the deepest and most permanent shift. Most people who struggle with people-pleasing have quietly outsourced their sense of worth to an external panel of judges, parents, colleagues, strangers online, without ever consciously appointing them to that role. Marcus Aurelius, writing privately to himself in Meditations, repeatedly redirects his own attention inward, examining his actions not by how they will be received, but by whether they align with his own reasoned judgment of what is right. Your task is to consciously build your own internal court. At the end of each day, instead of asking, "What did people think of me today?" ask instead, "Did I act with honesty, discipline, and fairness by my own honest assessment?" This single substitution, replacing an external audience with an internal standard, is, over time, the single most effective override for chronic people-pleasing. It gives you a judge whose verdict you can actually trust, and whose approval is finally, entirely within your control. Cato is remembered today not because people eventually approved of his dark toga. Most of them probably still thought he looked strange right up until the day he died. He is remembered because he became a man whose actions were no longer for sale. Not for coin, not for applause, not even for comfort. That kind of steadiness does not arrive by accident, and it does not arrive by simply deciding one day in a moment of frustration to stop caring. It is built the way any real strength is built. Slowly, through repeated, deliberate exposure to the very thing that used to control you. Somewhere in your week ahead, there will be a small moment. A raised eyebrow, an unspoken judgment, a silence after you say something true, where you will feel the old pull to shrink, to explain, to soften yourself back into acceptability. That moment is not a threat. It is training. It is the modern equivalent of bare feet on Roman stone, offered to you free of charge, disguised as an inconvenience. You will be tempted, as always, to treat that moment as an emergency. It is not. It is an invitation. The same invitation Cato accepted over and over, until the crowd's opinion simply stopped registering as a verdict on his worth, and became instead just whether passing over a mountain that had already decided where it stood. You do not need the whole world's approval to live well. You never did. You need one honest verdict, delivered by the only judge who was ever truly qualified to give it. The one looking back at you in the mirror each night, asking plainly whether you acted with integrity today regardless of who was watching, or what they thought. If this kind of clarity is what you are here for, subscribe. The next chapter of this philosophy is already on its way, and it goes even deeper than this one.